Welcome back to the channel, Helldivers. Today we're going to be ranking our stratagems against the Illuminate in these new mega city maps. We're going to be going over the Eagles, the Orbitals, the Emplacements, the Sentries, and the Vehicles. But we are going to be excluding the stratagem weapons because I think they deserve their own dedicated video. And actually, before we get started with the video, I want to do a huge shout out thank you to everybody who watched the last video. I don't know what was in the sauce, but we hit like over 100,000 views and had a crazy like ratio. And this might not seem like much, but for a small channel like this, yeah, it's a big deal. So thank you all for that. And let's get started with the video. So now moving to the tier list here. Man, we haven't done a tier list in a while. We have the Eagles, the Orbitals, we have the Emplacements, we have the turrets, we have the mines, and we have the vehicles that we're going to be talking about. Now, what makes this tier list different than another Illuminate tier list is the fact that, again, we are talking about these mega city maps. And even if we conclude our fight on Super Earth, I think these mega city maps will still be used on other planets. So the other factions may also be getting involved. And really quickly talking about these mega city maps and what makes them so different are these skyscrapers. They are everywhere. They will basically get in the way of a lot of these stratagems. That's not to say there aren't open areas, but enough of the mission objectives are tucked away in between these buildings. So some of these stratagems are basically going to excel throughout the entire mega city maps, while others are going to have a little bit of a harder time depending on the situation. So keeping that in mind, let's start off with the Eagles. Now with the Eagles here, we're going to be putting them into our 5 categories here. I will be saving the S tier picks for the end of the video, basically elevating probably some of the A tier picks there up into S tier. A tier is obviously outstanding, kind of what I mentioned earlier about stratagems that excel on these mega city maps. B, solid, viable. C, not necessarily bad stratagems, but I just wouldn't recommend them for these maps. And then D there is trash tier. Now when it comes to these Eagles here, the Eagles that go parallel or fly parallel to where your Helldiver is looking and when they throw the stratagem, they are not going to have a very hard time finding their mark compared to the Eagles there that go perpendicular to where you throw your stratagem down. So something that goes parallel to your Helldiver here is the Strafe and Run. I think the Strafe and Run is good. I think it sits in solid. It might get elevated a little bit later towards the end. We might do like a reshuffle, but for now, I think Strafe and Run, it sits in solid here. It does a good job at clearing out chaff and even hurting like harvesters. So that's where I think it lies for right now. And then similar to the Strafe and Run, I think the 500 kg also has an easy time finding its marks on these maps, and it does a good job at taking out warp ships and even harvesters if you get their shield down first. Now the same can be said for these rocket pods. They did get a little bit of a buff that their armor penetration's a little bit better now. Rocket pods in general, I think actually are going to sit on the very low end. Maybe they'll slip down to C tier because there's not that many armored units that the Illuminate have to throw at us. It's really just the harvesters. But I'll leave them there for now because, again, I think the rocket pods, again, with these maps, I think they always find their mark, essentially. You know, if the normal rocket pod tracking actually works. You know what? I'm going to put these down in C tier. I convinced myself. Now, unfortunately, I think the regular Eagle Airstrike and the Napalm and even the Airburst one here, I'm sorry, the Cluster Airstrike here, they fall into the don't recommend because, again, they come at that perpendicular angle and there's just a good chance they're going to hit a skyscraper or a tall building. Now, I actually think the cluster bomb is a little bit better. Maybe the cluster bomb, you can make a case for B tier because there is a lot of like light chaff when it comes to the Illuminate. And I think the cluster bomb is really good at taking those out. But again, it might be a little bit difficult to find a spot where this thing's actually going to be effective. Whereas something like the Strafe and Run and the 500 kg, these can fit into those tight places. Hell, even between buildings, these two will actually work pretty well. Oh yes, and I almost forgot about the smoke. I think the smoke airstrike here is just trash. You could maybe make a case for the smoke against the bots, but against the Illuminate, I would rather deal with their artillery and their long range with different stratagems than, again, the Eagle smoke here. And then it'll basically, let's just skip ahead here real quick and put the orbital smoke as well in the same spot. I don't recommend either one of these. I just think they're just bad. They need like almost like a rework at this point. But that's the Eagles. Let's go ahead and move on to the Orbitals now. Now moving to the Orbitals, you might be thinking, oh, the Orbitals are actually going to fare much better on these maps because they come like directly down. No, not the case actually. You'll notice when throwing some of these orbitals that the call time will get increased to like 19 seconds. And that's because your super destroyer has to move into place where it's like trying to avoid the large buildings. But even then, some of these orbitals just don't find their mark very well. So let's actually move to the first one I don't recommend, and that is the Precision Strike. I'm going to throw it down here in C tier, and that's because the Precision Strike What's really nice about it normally is the fact that you throw it down and it takes like 2 seconds for it to come down and just blow up whatever you targeted. But on these mega city maps, if you throw this thing down and then you see it has a 19-second delay, that timer is just far too long for what this stratagem is supposed to be. Now that's fine for something like warp ships that are parked and don't move, but I just think we have way better options to deal with parked warp ships than bringing a orbital precision strike. And I'm tempted to put the orbital gas strike as well in the same spot, but I found that even if this doesn't find its mark, the gas will actually still hit the ground. And because of that lingering gas effect, it's just not like a one and done like the precision strike. No, you can actually use this to cover an area and then lure enemies in. So that's kind of the difference between the gas strike and the precision strike for me. Now, the orbital laser here, I think it borders on A tier. Now it does run into the issue of the other orbitals there, where sometimes it'll be a longer delay, and then sometimes buildings can get in the way of the orbital laser here. But because the orbital laser tracks, it'll at least track and then move past buildings and still be effective, so it won't be a total waste. And it is a really good stratagem on those repel warp ship invasion maps, which can be pretty tough because this thing will just track and basically go from one ship to the other. But outside of that, I'd say on the normal like 40-minute missions, I don't know. This one's kind of a toss-up. I do think this is it sits on the border of A and B because yes, this thing tracks, but if it just tracks and it goes from behind one building to another and it barely gets that laser connection time, that could feel bad because this is on a very, very long cooldown and it only has 3 uses. I'm going to slip it down to B tier for now. We can actually throw another orbital into the trash tier, and that is the railgun. Unfortunately, this thing has, because a lot of the other stratagems have slowly started getting more buffs and getting stronger and stronger, it just makes the railgun look weaker and weaker now, essentially, because of its long cooldown and it's just just whack shot. Still love bringing the rail cannon here against the bugs and even the bots to an extent, but against the Illuminate here, it doesn't even one-shot like Leviathans. So because of that, yeah, I had to put the rail cannon in trash tier. Man, that hurts. That hurts my heart a lot. Now, the airburst and the Gatling here, I like the Gatling better. I'm going to stick it up into solid, and I guess I'll put the airburst kind of right next to it because I feel like this really just comes down to a preference. But because these two have a lingering effect, and they kind of do track around a little bit. So even if they have like a shot or like a couple of volleys that hit a building, as long as you throw it correctly and your ship actually, moves into the correct position, which it usually does, most of the stratagems targeting will actually work and find its mark. And given the nature of the squids being a lot of like light chaff, I think both of these stratagems are actually really good. So I think they can sit in that solid tier. And then we have the EMS mortar here. I like the EMS a lot. If you ever actually want to protect your siege soldiers, then yeah, the EMS and the EMS mortar as well do a pretty good job at stun locking enemies to make sure that, yeah, your boys in blue stay safe. But I don't think I'd recommend taking this over something like the airstrikes because again, there are open areas where like these airstrikes can be really effective, but there's just enough times where not so much. And I feel like I would still rather take these over the EMS essentially. More of a support role pick here. And I honestly just don't see anybody bringing the EMS orbital like ever. Now let's talk about the barrages because they all kind of sit in the same category where your ship will move into place and they will just pepper an area down. And for that, I think they do sit somewhere in the solid tier. I'm not particularly worried about their placement because I think they all kind of sit in the general area. They kind of do the same thing with like little nuances. Because even if you throw any of these, say, I would say like in a bad location, there's a good chance a couple of the barrages, they're gonna, hit the ground and hopefully find, whatever you're aiming at. But I do think I actually like the orbital barrage a little bit better than them just because the orbital barrage here, very, very short cooldown. So I think I'm going to give it the leg up there. But again, I think all these sit very comfortably in B tier. And man, that upper tier there is looking really bare bones. Well, luckily, we're about to talk about sentries. And the sentries are probably going to be the easiest section to talk about. You have the machine gun and Gatling, A tier easily. The rocket and then the autocannon, these will actually target Leviathans and they're very good at taking out harvesters and even flesh mobs. And then even the flame sentry here, really good at melting voteless. Now when it comes to the mortars here, I will actually probably slip these two down into B tier because the EMS more of a support role. I don't really know where to place this, so I'm gonna just stick it at the end. More of a support role. It can hit buildings and kind of needs an open area. Same goes for the regular mortar, but the regular mortar, on the other hand, Because the Illuminate forces, or a lot of them are melee, so there's a good chance that when they get up in your face and you have a mortar basically supporting you from afar, that it'll kill you. So that kind of puts a little damper on it. But there's no denying that these mortars are excellent at defense missions. But if we're leaning more towards those 40-minute missions, yeah, they're still really solid. They're just not as good as these other sentries. And what makes basically generally all the sentries so good is the fact that they have a pretty low cooldown. But as long as you place them not in the middle of a pack, they are going to be super efficient at getting kills for you. If you ever are like, man, how do I get like 300 kills plus in a mission? Just bring sentries. They will do a lot of the legwork for you. It's just crazy how good these stratagems are, even not on defensive missions. They're basically good for every sort of objective. Love sentries. Can't say enough about them. They probably going to see a few of them in my my S tier pick. But let's move on to the mines now. Now with the mines here, similar to the sentries, where you throw your stratagem down, they will land right on it. You're not going to have issues with them like running into buildings or something like that. And I will say efficiency wise and how effective they can be really good. The only downside with mines is usually just your teammates running into them, or they're being placed down on objectives and you need to run around them or through them, and that can get a little bit messy. But if you're locked in as far as where you're throwing them, and then your team is also locked in with their awareness of them, I don't see why mines wouldn't be in A tier. But let's be honest, with teammates in this game, their mine placements aren't usually the best. So you could almost say there's a little bit of a learning curve, or maybe a skill gap when you're using mines. So I think I have to stick them all basically into B tier. So let's do that really quick. And I think you can make a case for the anti-tank one here. Maybe just, I don't recommend it. I don't think they have enough large enemies to really make this one worthwhile. Now you might be sitting there thinking, well, what about the flesh mobs? I think these regular mines, the gas and the flame, take them out pretty well in general. And then also even the Tesla tower can cook them. So I just generally think these mines are a cut above the anti-tank when it comes to the squids. But yeah, with mines, you need a little bit of awareness, and so does your team. Either way, they are very efficient at racking up kills for you, and maybe taking out your fellow Helldivers that you don't particularly like. But anywho, let's talk about the vehicles now. Now, when it comes to vehicles, I say vehicles because we have exosuits and we have the fast recon vehicle as well. The Emancipator goes into A tier for exosuit, and the Patriot here, I would still consider it A tier. It's just, I think the Emancipator here with its autocannons, the ammo economy is way more efficient. You can rack up a lot more kills than you can with the machine gun and then rocket variant here. But both of these are very good. Maybe this just comes down to preference. The only thing you have to worry about when you're in an exosuit are Leviathans, because they will snipe you. And I think with this latest patch they're targeting as far as the Leviathans, I think it got a lot better. So you guys let me know how that's affecting you, if you think they kind of tweaked how these Leviathans snipe now. And then with the fast recon vehicle here, this is just a fun stratagem. I didn't make a section for it. I should probably do that. But out of fear of this list getting fucked up, I will just put the fast recon into solid. I love this stratagem when I'm playing with friends over comms, and it can be hit or miss with like random Helldivers. Either way, when you're using the fast recon vehicle, you're just in for a good goofy time. And the last section here are the emplacements. I think these are also all basically A tier. Very efficient at taking out a lot of the Illuminate and having the potential to take out structures. I'm looking at you, anti-tank emplacement, for just being S tier at taking out basically everything as far as limit, but more in particular is Leviathans. I know some people struggle to take out these giant ships flying in the air. The anti-tank emplacement is my go-to for it. I find it super efficient. The cooldown's very short and it just packs a punch. Now the heavy machine gun emplacement, also just really good. And not enough people bring the grenade launcher barricade here. This thing's a lot of fun to use. I think it's really good against the squids, because you can just go to town with that grenade launcher and just wipe the field. Now when it comes to the shield generator here, this is the free stratagem we have at the moment. And this thing is just, it doesn't cover you for long enough. It seems like its shield goes down very quickly. I think they try to counterbalance that with making it have a shorter cooldown. But even when they give it to us for free, I don't really think it's that effective. And again, if they didn't provide a free one for us, I don't think I'd really ever use this thing. I'm going to put this one, I think, in the don't recommend as well. Now I'm going to take a look at this one last time. I'm going to do a reshuffle, and then I think I'm going to crown a couple S tier picks. As far as the reshuffling goes, I did do a little shifting, nothing major, just to kind of show from left to right what I kind of prefer. But I think this list basically fits how I feel about these stratagems on these mega cities. And I think the biggest indicator of that is if I see somebody bringing anything in the A and B tier, I go, okay. Now, if you start bringing some of that C tier and D tier stuff, I would then, some flags would start to go off in my head and be like, you sure about that one, buddy? So pretty happy with this overall. Now let's crown some S tier picks. And the first one I'm going to crown has to be the machine gun sentry. Medium armor penetration. This thing is just going to rack up a bunch of kills for you, and it's on a very, very short cooldown. The next one has to be the anti-tank emplacement, taking out Leviathans, for taking out harvesters, flesh mobs. Just really solid overall. I'm tempted to put the Emancipator up there, but because of the long cooldown, you have a limited amount of uses, and then Leviathans are pretty good at sniping these things. I think it's just going to stay in A tier for now. And you know what? I think I'm happy with just those two stratagems in S tier, because I know if I just take those two stratagems, it frees up my kit to bring basically anything I want, because I know with just those two, I'm going to be contributing to my team just fine. But yes, that is my list here. Obviously, this is how I prefer to play the game as far as my stratagem picks. Let me know if I missed something, or maybe if you agree. And I think with that, I will see you guys next time. Peace and take care.